Alright, how about a story? Okay, I get a fair amount of wildlife moving through the property because we live on a creek bank, and it has some entertaining situations that have come up over the years. And one of them involved the big maple tree out front. And this thing was huge. It was about 4 feet across. And the entertaining thing was it wasn't actually just one tree. It was two trees that had kind of grown up next to each other, and so their trunks were combined. And it had a seam that went up the middle of it. And over the years, it looked kind of cool. But what happened is I think the thing hollowed out, and so which I was getting to where, all right, we're going to need to cut the thing down at some point, but which we did. But anyways, where it gets interesting with the dogs and the wildlife is that one summer the dogs got to watching the tree, literally watching the tree. They'd stand there next to this crack in it, and they'd have their noses pressed up against there, inhaling deeply, and they'd be watching it. And I'd walk by and call them off and everything, didn't think anything of it. Because the next day they'd totally ignore it. And then a couple days later they'd be back with their noses pressed up against the tree. So it finally got to me. And I walked over there and I pressed my face up against it with an eyeball to the crack and everything. And here inside it, there was three baby raccoons. So they must have been moving in and out depending on what they were doing for hunting for grubs or whatever at night. And depending on where they were at on their route and everything, they'd come and camp out in the tree for a day or two. And so it got to the point where if I noticed the dogs watching the tree with their noses up against it, I'd walk over there and I'd have my face pressed up against this crack too, looking for the babies inside. And we spent about 2-3 weeks with that before they got big enough and they moved out and stayed away and that kind of thing. So it's kind of entertaining and kind of funny. If you had timed it right and pulled into the yard, you'd seen the three of us all pressed up to this crack in the tree with the dogs had their noses there and I had my face up there, the eyeball to the crack, looking into this tree, watching these baby raccoons wrestle and squirm around inside it. It's kind of fun. So, yeah, baby raccoons. They're kind of cute. Go swim? You guys want to go swim? Yeah, you're good dogs.